The investment meeting for May 2024, please make your introductions for the record.
Stephanie Zimberg, representing Police Commissioner Caban.
Allison Hirsch, representing Controller Brad Landon.
John Dosa, alternate designee for Controller Brad Landon.
Steve Meyer, Chief Investment Officer for the Bureau of Asset Management, as an invited guest.
Brian Berge, representing Mayor Eric Adams. I'd also like to note that Kevin Lewis here from the mayor's office and may be stepping in for me later in the meeting.
Nadia Fazilina, Department of Finance.
Authoring the PBA.
Alice Arno, PBA.
Freddie Winter, PBA.
Chris McGrath, PBA by invitation.
Rob Appling, Wilshire, by invitation of trustees.
Nicole Jambrisi, Police Pension Fund, present by invitation of the fund.
Jeffrey Ward, DEA.
Dennis Cannon, representing Lou Turco.
Chris Monahan, DEA.
Bob Senskis, Fed Pension Fund, present by invitation.
Kevin Holleran, Pension Fund, present by invitation.
Michelle Davidson, Axia, present by invitation.
Marietta Dewey-Gary, Alexia, present by invitation. Kate Visconti, Bureau of Asset Management, present by invitation.
Marta Ross, Law Department, present by invitation.
Okay. The SBA?
Are we doing?
Anthony Brown, SBA.
Anybody else? I don't think so.
No.
And John, for the rest of them, leave
Yes,
that to
so
you.
I will note that there are several members from the Bureau of Asset Management that are participating in the public session. In the event that any of them speak and address the board, we will ask that they identify themselves for the record.
One other person, the actuary.
Mark Tiskevich, Office of the Actuary by invitation.
So thank you. We'll note the presence of the actuary. Okay, we have a very important but public session, and we have a couple of things that we'll need to talk about in executive session. Before we go into executive session, though, the important item of the day is the results of the STAR report and the recommendations that are coming out of that. I'm going to turn over to Allison to give the overview, a couple of remarks, and then Kate, I believe, is going to, who's going to do the presentation? Kate's going to show this. Okay, Kate's going to show the slides, and I'm going to turn it over to Allison and Steve to kind of walk us through the presentation.
Sure, so I can start just as a reminder, just the context of the process and timing. So about a year ago now, I think, at this board, we reviewed a plan to bring on an outside consultant that would look at how BAM operates and how BAM operates, particularly in reference to serving the directives of the trustees of the five systems. And so we pulled together a committee across the five systems of representatives from labor representatives from each of the five systems and Mr. Berge as to serve as an oversight committee for this review. That oversight committee then oversaw much of the procurement to figure out which consultant we were going to bring on to do that, to execute that review. We brought on McKinsey. McKinsey started work in about September or October of 2023 and began, as I said, sort of reviewing the operations of BAM, how we're structured and function in relationship to the trustees and how we're providing maximum service to the trustees. McKinsey finished that work and submitted a series of recommendations to us, and Steve will go through some of them, I'll go through some of them, towards the end of February. At the same time, on a parallel track, the Office of the Controller brought on Mercer to do a comp study of the Bureau of Asset Management staff, particularly on the investment side, but also on the operations side. Because the last time many folks in BAM had gotten a raise was in 2014, which is the last time there was a comp study done, and the board voted on a new corpus package at that time. And because of the nature of that, there have been no increases since then, the market has changed, et cetera. And so we needed to do an end. We've lost a lot of staff, and so wanted to do an analysis of that. So what we're presenting today is both the results and recommendations of the STAR review and around BAM structure, operations, how we work with trustees, governance, et cetera, and the comp study, so that we can combine recommendations into one broad recommendation. The idea is that we also did a call on, I believe, April 8th that all trustees were invited to, where McKinsey and Mercer presented their, findings themselves. And then on April 18th, did a call that all the trustees were invited to, where BAM did an initial 5 cross-system, presentation of sort of our proposals and recommendations. And so what we're gonna talk about today is specific to the police pension fund. In your, in convene and in your packets, and I think we have copies, maybe, we will email it out afterwards if we don't have copies. By the way, Kate Visconti, who's here, actually runs everything that happens in the Bureau of Asset Management in the most amazing way. That's why I look at her whenever I don't know what I'm saying. And so what we have in we've sent around a draft, and we'll get to what this is in a moment, service compact agreement. And we sent it yesterday for you all to review, because one of the biggest recommendations coming out of these proposals is that every year, the Bureau of Asset Management come before the trustees with like a service agreement, right? You know, some might call it MOU, some might call, their service level agreement is a private sector thing, whereas really it's part of the delegation, investment advisory, Bureau of Asset Management says, this is what we're committed to working on this year. These are our priorities. This is our work plan. Get input from the trustees, et cetera. If there are actual resource needs attached to that, we say like, we can't do that with these resources, that becomes an annual discussion as opposed to right now, my experience for the last 2 years is often there's like a lot of disconnects between nobody really knows what BAM does, and how we do it. And so the timing, the thinking here is that today we're gonna have an initial discussion with the hope that by the June meeting, there'll be time to review that draft Service Compact Act, provide feedback, have discussion, and vote on the recommendations that we're hoping to implement, the comps that we're hoping to implement, and as part of sort of the first annual Service Compact Agreement, that would then be something that comes before the trustees.
Question, just if, out of the report, if we like some recommendations, but we dislike others, can we piecemeal?
Yes. Yes. I mean, the hope I would say, like, there are certain recommendations, to be clear, that if all 5 systems don't adopt, we can't do them, right? And so if there are concerns about a specific recommendation that is like that, then we will engage in a discussion and say, like, can we try, right? But
The question is it all in or all out? But
it's not all in or all out.
So when that time comes, if it comes, we'll have discussion.
Exactly.
It's meant to be highly customizable. It's also important to note that the top 2, the STAR review, the strategic and tactical accountability review, and the compensation review, as Allison suggested, are things I kicked off in my first 2 weeks of joining. DTI analysis within the first quarter of my joining. So I've had the privilege of being your CIO and working for the Bureau of Asset Management now for almost 23 months. So this has been a lot of work in the back that we've done, really to provide better support and service, more customization, to make sure we have the right people on the team that can support and service you guys the way you desire to be. So that's a great question about the customization, that there are certain aspects of it that really would only work if everyone accepted it, but it's meant to be highly customizable and very directed specifically to your needs within the police fire.
Brian,
Police pension.
yeah.
Sure. So the service level compact, that derives pretty much exclusively from the McKinsey STAR report, which was conducted in the way you described.
Yes.
The compensation and staffing piece, that is derived from a combination, sort of a merger of the McKinsey and the Mercer piece?
The staffing recommendations, yes. The staffing recommendations are almost fully derived from the McKinsey and Ehrenberg reviews, and I forgot to mention Ehrenberg. We also did a review of the economically targeted investment program to make sure we're maximizing that program. The staffing recommendations come primarily from McKinsey, it's a little bit of Ehrenberg in there, and the comp comes from, we then overlaid the comp recommendations from Mercer with the staffing recommendations, et cetera, to come up, to have one.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is, why weren't these things integrated from the start and something that the board had input on in the way we had input on the McKinsey thing? Like, why were there ever 2 different pieces? Was McKinsey not capable of evaluating?
McKinsey doesn't do comp studies.
Okay.
So we couldn't have integrated in STAR, and the actual honest, can we go off the record for a moment? Oh, no, we're in public.
We're in public.
Okay, And the Mercer comp review was, as I mentioned, it was led by the Controller's Office HR team and not the Bureau of Asset Management. And so it was just a different system and process, because that was how it was done last.
So, Brian, with all due respect, I think we're putting the cart before the horse, because I think there's two different presentations here. I know you're trying to conflate them
Well, we're-
inadvertently, they're
We
conflated.
are.
But I think that, it's important for folks to hear the STAR review findings, and then it dovetails into the other, into the Mercer report, and then, all of it kind of together. You had the benefit of sitting on the STAR committee and seeing this presentation. I'm respectful of the fact that a majority of this board had not seen a version of this presentation. So I just don't think it's fair to jump to one without folks
I
understanding.
know,
the
it's a
majority.
valid question, but there are multiple, there have to be multiple different inputs into a final recommendation.
I would never want to be unfair.
I believe last time, when we gave the compensation package, I don't think there was a board vote on it. I mean, there was a board vote on the actual raises, but I don't think
There was no board vote
right,
on doing the
you know, I
compensation.
mean, for, you know,
Yeah.
HR to take a look and say, my employees on the paid, since they haven't got, since 2014. But I don't recall last time if we had a board vote to have them engage with a consultant.
No, we did not. My understanding is that there was no board vote. There was also, for folks who've been on the board for a while, in 2014, at the same time they did the comp study, they also did the Funston review, which was like the review of BAM operations, et cetera. There was also no board engagement or process associated with that at all. It was entirely internal to the Controller's Office. And so, like, we were very conscious of the fact that there was a lot of good modernization that happened as a result of Funston, but a lot of, like, challenges were created out of it with trustee engagement. And so we wanted to handle STAR differently and really say, like, okay, some changes were made for Funston, but how is Sam actually serving the trustees, and focus STAR that way, which is what
I guess I'll wait for the compensation until we get to the slides, because we really, last time, bumped them up pretty significantly, you know, and I'll see that again, and hope it's in line on, and there was a problem that we couldn't hire a CIO. I mean, that was part of the issue, you know, significantly raised the salary of CIO and others. But we'll wait till they're ready.
Okay, so we're gonna spend most of our time on the draft trustee service compact today, and that includes the comp expense, that'll include the comp. We did wanna say there were sort of 6 areas of focus that the McKinsey folks identified to focus on. And I just wanna touch on the first 2 very quickly, because we're not gonna actually dig into those as part of the service compact act. We wanna mention them. The first one is investment procurement. And what McKinsey found, which I think nobody will be surprised by, is that it takes a really long time, and particularly on the public market side, and to execute a procurement on behalf of the system. And one thing they found was that, yes, some of that is based on the specifics of the New York State Procurement Policy Board rules. One piece that's gonna come out of this is that the legal team in the Controller's Office is gonna take a look at those rules and see if there are changes that we'd wanna recommend to try to speed up that process. For instance, the state PPP does not require the state public markets to go through the same process. The state PPP allows New York State Common to use the same procurement methods that we use in private markets. And so we wanna try to figure out whether we could do that, right? So there's gonna be a whole legal review of the PPP rules. But even while that goes on and it takes forever to change PPP rules, one of the things McKinsey found is that there's so many internal bureaucratic steps within the Controller's Office that we are taking a process that theoretically could be 7 to 12 months and turning it into 18 to 24 months. And so McKinsey recommended that we try to get rid of a lot of those internal handoffs. And Brad and sort of the ACO team in the Controller's Office agreed. And so one thing we're going to be doing moving forward on internally in the Controller's Office that does not require board approval, but you should know, is we're going to hire a BAM ACO, Agency Chief Contracting Officer, that's specific to the Bureau of Asset Management and the pension fund system, so that we don't have to wait in the same queue as every other bureau in the controller's office to move procurement forward. And also hire an additional legal resource so that we can move those procurements forward faster without having to wait in the queue with everything.
If you want to add additional staff and using corpus funding, it doesn't require board review.
Adding additional staffing requires board review. What doesn't require board, that part is gonna come in the Service Compact Act, yes. What doesn't, the restructuring internally without additional staffing, like who signs off on it inside,
Oh,
it
no,
doesn't.
that's fine.
That's
I mean, but you say you create
Yes.
a new position.
Correct.
Is that additional, you know?
One of those positions might be city side, I can't remember, because they're gonna be, they have to deal with some procurements within BAM, like for the cash debts or whatever that aren't mentioned, but correct. We'll go through the whole, we have as part of this is a whole staffing recommendation that you would have.
And everything that touches investments, I'll have oversight and responsibility for. This is really about implementing the will of the trustees. When you guys give us a mandate to go forward and do a search or go through a contracting process, it takes way too long. So it increases the level of accountability. So for private markets, we actually have a dedicated team within our Office of General Counsel, within the Controller's Office, that only work on our deals for your funds. And that's actually very efficient. We can use outside counsel. We can get deals done there in a few months. But for the normal procurement process, it takes much longer. So there needs to be a level of accountability. If there's an issue with, say, BlackRock or SSGA or any of your asset managers that's not responding from a contracting standpoint, then I can get on the phone and call the relationship manager and push things forward, just like we do on the private side. So it's really about moving things forward.
Yeah.
No issue. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm
these
sure
two resources are both gonna be city taxpayer funded because they will necessarily have to deal with non-specialized.
Yeah, I have no issue with making it, I'm sure we're missing out on managers that don't want to basically take 24 months to go into a contract.
Yeah. Or, we're typically not tactical or strategic, but when you give us a mandate and it takes 2 years to implement, that's way too long. Unless there's a good reason for it. I know we owe the board an update on developed market ex-US. We're still working on the analysis. We're spending a lot of time. We're happy to share all that with you. That's more along the lines of us trying to be in a position where we're very confident with the recommendations, again, and more customized across the 5 plans, working with the general consultants. But that's just an example of how these things can take a while. We just want to tighten it up. I think we should be able to implement and execute in less than a year. That's not a big ask.
Okay, and then the other piece we're not gonna focus on today, because will come back before the board at the appropriate time, is one of the things McKinsey identified is that across the 5 systems, the dynamic, the consultants that report to the trustees, not to BAM, right? That is very clear, that is explicit. But the relationship and way BAM and consultants and trustees as like a trio, a triangle, if you will, work together varies across the 5 systems, different, and the way the specialty consultants interact with general consultants vary across the 5 systems. And so just one recommendation is that when we do go back out with a new RFP for consultants, to look very carefully at the terms of those RFPs with the trustees and see to the extent possible that we can standardize expectations, et cetera, to try to do that. So that is a to come, there's no problem to fix there, it's just something.
Yeah, it's actually gotten much better. Over the last 22 months, the relationship we have with all 5 of the general consultants, all the specialty consultants, I think is working really well. And that's what you want. You want, your people that are supporting you, either in BAM or general consultants, specialty consultants, to work in concert with one another. And the challenge is, how do you think about the portfolios holistically? So within BAM, we look across everything. We do have a good view. We think the general consultants should have the exact same view, but there is a little bit of a disconnect from time to time with general consultants not actually updating the specialty consultants not updating the general consultants. We just think there's a better way to harmonize that. Again, not to change the reporting lines, but to give a better outcome to the plans coordination.
If I could just chime in on that, Steve, because I think the important thing to remember is, in the old days, the portfolio was 3% alternatives and 97% publicly traded assets. It's now closer to 70-30 or even 65-35, depending on how you want to look at it. So you have a lot more oversight on the specialty consultants over the silos of the portfolio. That I think if we can figure out a way to standardize that, it'd just be a better product for all of us if we're all moving in the same direction. And if if folks had a free flow of access regarding our accounts, not other clients' accounts, just, when it comes to making sure the police pension fund is getting the optimum advice, it'd be nice if everybody kind of knew what everybody else was doing, and,
Yeah.
and we looked at it in the totality.
I give you a really easy example, so equity exposure, beta exposure to equity markets. It occurs not only in your public equities, but also in your private equities. You also have equity exposure in hedge funds. And those are things that we need to think about. How does that impact the overall performance of the portfolio? And I'm looking at Rob, but I know that there may be different degrees across the 5 different general consultants. You need to know everything that's going on in the portfolios. You're not a general consultant just for public markets. You have purview and responsibility around strategic asset allocation. You need to know, and I just, some of the recommendations are to make sure that that line of communication exists between specialty consultants and general consultants, and then up to the trustees. Right.
Brian, did you agree?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we're going to use this opportunity to seek out specialty consultants for OFI.
I think that is a decision for the trustees to make when we go through that.
That's a good recommendation.
I mean, as it's an increasing part of our SAA, it does seem like an anomaly that we don't have that.
Yeah, my understanding is the last time this came, I can't remember, there were, yes, it's a discussion that we need to have as a board.
We should know it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just talking out loud, or it's a board decision.
Yes.
But yeah, that is one of the, okay, now, are we moving, let's move on to the actual.
Yeah.
Okay, the trustee services. So, as I said, you all, I think yesterday we circulated it again, we'll email it again after, because we didn't expect anybody to read it between yesterday and today. So we expect everyone to vote right now. The trustee service compact, in your packet, it's just like 20, how many pages is it? It's long, it's long. Each year as part of the compact, what we want to review is the PPF, the IPS, starting with investment beliefs, which actually does not currently exist in our IPS statement. This comes from one of the things McKinsey found in the review, was that they did a survey of like BAM staff and trustees across the 5 systems, and something like 75% of BAM staff thought that BAM was executing the will of the trustees in a way that is in line with the trustees' desires, like ideas, beliefs, et cetera. Only 25% of trustees felt that way. And so there's like a big divide there, right? And I think part of that is that, and this is where customization comes in, each of the 5 systems have actual different investment priorities, beliefs. We all want the highest risk-adjusted returns. But, how you get there might look different. And so one piece that we want to do in the coming year is develop clear police pension fund investment beliefs that we're all clear on to guide the work of Bureau of Asset Management. And then we would review those as part of the annual service compact act to are there changes? Is there something new we need to add, or are we good? We would also review, as part of the IPS statement, there is a role of the controller, like make sure that everybody is clear on what BAM should and should not be leading on, particularly vis-a-vis consultants, vis-a-vis others, et cetera. And then the rest of the meat of the trustees service compact, an opportunity for trustees to review and approve BAM's missions, our service priorities and commitments, the annual work plan, as well as calendar for trustee meetings. And then the 2 pieces that we are really going to talk about mostly today are in much more detail, the pilot for a joint manager meeting. As part of the annual Service Compact Act, we're recommending that that's when the board approved the Controller's Office delegation, investment advisory delegation, so that delegation can be, contingent on the work that we do. And then each year, we would ask for approval of the annual corpus budget and resources. And so this year, that includes the recommendations of increased staff and comp. And future years, that might be no increase or no change. It might be we realize that our technology is completely outdated and we're asking for support to change that. So those are sort of the components of the trustee service. Should we wait for it?
No. I'll let them.
Okay, I think I might have just said this, I don't know if we need to read it.
Let's move on.
Okay. Joint manager meeting, so Steve, I don't know if you wanna.
Yeah, maybe just touch base, so, you know, just my observation, having been here for a while now, we spend the bulk of the time with the trustees focusing on new manager reviews and approvals. And I think there's a number of things that we don't actually properly focus on, in terms of strategic topics, like, for example, peer-to-peer reviews, portfolio construction, deeper dives on performance, fees, value for fees. There's a whole bunch of things that as trustees you need to be aware of, and we need to present to you, that we just simply don't have time for. And as we go down the path where we've increased the allocations, I should say the trustees have increased the allocations to private assets, it's gonna probably be more and more and more deals, so these meetings are gonna get longer and longer and longer. And we're just trying to be efficient in terms of how we can, have the managers reviewed. So the proposal for the joint manager meeting really revolves around, one manager meeting a month that all 5 of the pension plans can dial into and listen into, and then have individual discussions and approvals at your separate, normal course meetings such as today. So it's trying to be a little more efficient in the presentations, and a focus on new managers. We hope that we don't have to go through that process for re-ups. However, if there are issues with any of your managers, they are always available to come in, and present, as appropriate. So we're just trying to be more efficient, more streamlined.
And let me just, and I just wanna, I know Chris had to, leave the room for a moment, but this is one of those proposals I said, like, either we get to some kind of agreement amongst all 5 systems, or it's not gonna work, right? And so that doesn't mean that what we're proposing, if you have a sign up on our proposal or not, like, you have time between now and next month, hopefully, to figure out the right approach, but like, it's not gonna work if 3 out of 5 systems say this is a good idea, but the other 2 don't. And so as Steve said, the idea of the joint manager meeting is that we would, on either a quarterly or monthly basis, proactively send all the trustees a pipeline of, these are the managers that are gonna be presented, recommended to the system over the next 1, 2 to 3 months, depending on how much foresight we actually have. Of those managers, these 4 are new managers, these 5 are re-ups. We are recommending that we invite these 4 new managers into a joint manager meeting to meet with the trustees and answer any questions, et cetera. If a trustee says, you know what, I know we've met with, I'm gonna, you know, say, I'm gonna name a manager, like, that we have a strategic partnership, let's say KKR. You know, actually, so we'll say we have a KKR fund coming up, and we're recommending that they don't need to come back to the joint manager meeting because we've met with them many, many times. If a trustee of any of the systems were to say, actually, we have some concerns with KKR, we want to see them before we make any decision on this fund, then they too would come into the joint manager meeting, right? Trustees always will have the option to say we want to add somebody to that meeting. To be clear, trustees will still receive the BAM memo. Trustees would receive the BAM memo, the consultant memo, all before the joint manager meeting, so there can be full review. And there would be no action taken at those meetings. This would just be an opportunity for trustees who are interested to meet the managers directly, ask them questions directly, and then all action would be taken at the individual board meeting, where we, as Steve said, would also be able to spend more time talking about strategic portfolio construction, strategic asset allocation, what other educational opportunities, et cetera, at the board meeting. So that's how we would think about it.
Also, we're trying to come up with not more than 2 pages, hopefully 1-page summary memos for consumption. So I read all of them, and they're sometimes 30+ pages. It takes a while to get through. We're trying to come up with a summary format. We've actually tried to use, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but artificial intelligence on an old deal that we did. Weren't subject to an NDA. We loaded that in and asked to summarize. It didn't come out that well, but it's still a work in process. We do think there's a need for the longer, full analysis that you'll have access to, but also just something that's more succinct.
So I'll just say, Chris, for your benefit on the joint manager meetings, you know, and just because we've had conversations about this in the past, I think this is, I think we've taken into account one of your biggest concerns, which is seeing new managers and seeing managers that, and being able to look them in the eye. And I think this is designed to capture that and to foreshadow to trustees, these are the managers that are new, spell that out for folks. And if there's a desire to see them and, you know, look them in their eyes, as you've often said, we have that built in here. We're not losing sight of that. I think where we're really focusing on, and this may sound like a repeat of what Alvin just said, but just for Chris's benefit, you know, we do have a lot of re-up managers that we may have seen 6 months ago with a different product, and, you know, you may not want to sit through that. We should tell you ahead of time they're coming in, but, you know, that may not be when you want to sit in on, because you just heard the presentation 6 months before. So we're trying to find the sweet
Five
spot.
systems with new managers presenting.
Yeah, so I mean, at the expense of repeating myself, I'll be very quick, but
I'm sorry.
that's totally fine. So.
I told it away, Chris.
I
think you guys skipped this page.
For the record, I'm just kidding.
Hurry up, get this page done.
The idea is, first of all, what I said at the outset was like, this is one of those proposals that either all 5 systems gets an agreement on or it doesn't work. Right? The idea is, all new managers would come before the joint manager meeting. Any re-ups, we would send all trustees a list of upcoming potential recommendations in advance with new managers and re-ups. Any re-up that any trustee across 5 systems says, actually, even though we saw that manager last year, I still want to see them again. If one trustee wants them to come, we would invite them to the joint manager meeting. So new managers would automatically be expected to come to the joint manager meeting, and upon request, we would bring any re-up to the joint manager meeting. And then, and BAM, you would get BAM memos and consultant memos before the manager meeting. No action takes place at those meetings. It's just, you get the information and then discussion and action takes place at your individual.
Is there any discussion on, I don't want to use the SIM word, but anything like that again?
No.
All right, because this was a recommendation we made a while back. Once we have, you know, new manager come, have all the trustees, because that's favorite manager, really. They got to go, you know, sometimes 5 times they go into 5 different boards. And that just makes sense, and then we
Yeah.
just vote on it in our meeting.
My concern is the scheduling of those meetings. We have many responsibilities, and if you decide to schedule it, I know that I'm here on, you know, the Tuesday, the first Tuesday. And so I would object if you schedule it for a date that's not convenient for me.
I think the idea is that we would have 1 day a month that is, if we get approval from this, we would set a set date each month. Again, making up the date so that it's consistent, so everybody could know what that date was.
I feel very strongly about that.
That's a good one.
We can also look at the option of recording these so they can be looked at your leisure. We need to
I
make
want
sure
to
that
do
the
live.
managers.
I don't want, and I would object to that.
It's nice to have
Yeah,
them
we
there
can-
so that if
I
you
think
have a
we
question,
got-
at least you do ask the manager a question.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
answer,
I
rather
think-
than a recording.
This would not be one of those things where like haphazardly we're scheduling something each month. We would have a set date each month, and if we get to approval on this from the 5 systems, we can figure out what the best date is.
By the way, I should also just mention, just to your point, not one of your outside managers has ever complained about having to come spend time with you. That's not the issue here. Just trying to be more efficient. I agree. I'd rather have them managing your money than sitting in your lobby, or any of the other funds lobbies for that matter.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it's just being fair for everybody, for
Yeah.
the managers, but you made a great point. It would have to kind of be a set date where, you know, we pencil in, like, the disability meeting every second Wednesday,
Right.
so we know.
Exactly. Once you make a set date, and we should all be able to fit it into our schedules. As long as it's not, you know, oh, by the way, it's gonna be next week, or next month it's gonna be on a Tuesday. I think that works.
You know, I don't know how many members are, how many trustees are on the other boards, but that's a lot of people to agree on a date.
And one of the things, one of the
It is.
reasons
It's gonna
was,
be a lot of
I mean,
people.
one of the
I just
reasons
said
we want
that's
to
all.
structure
Yeah.
that way.
Hold on, and I want,
Just, hold on, one at a time.
Yes.
Got a couple of conversations going on at once, so please.
So what I was going to say is that one of the reasons we're structuring this way is because there is not unanimity amongst trustees across the 5 systems about whether they even want to sit on the manager. And so this is not going to be an official board meeting, so it's not going to be a sim, right, where you need a quorum. And so I am less concerned if we know there are certain trustees who really fundamentally care about being in person or seeing these managers face to face. as we schedule this, that's great, because there are other trustees. It is going to be optional for all trustees, and so I think we can, I feel confident we can figure the logistics of the scheduling now.
Do we have to ensure that there's not a quorum from any given board?
That is a murder
I
question.
think going
No.
into advice when we're in public.
Sure. Well,
Okay,
let's
we
just
can have
leave
that, we can
floating
circle
in the
back
air.
on that.
So I think we should, look, I think that there's a lot of, I think if there's a desire to do this, then we'll address all of the questions and concerns. But I think this is the first meeting that a lot of folks are hearing this. So I think it's just important to understand the direction we're trying to move into for efficiency. And what I'll say is, look, I think we facilitate on this side a pretty good investment meeting as it stands today. And I think we do that in multiple boards, and I have no reason to believe that we couldn't duplicate it. And I think we've proved over the last several months that, we get managers in, we ask the right questions, and we get them, we get them out and get to the next manager, and people have ample time to ask questions, and we perform our due diligence and we do our job. And I think we can do that on a broader scale with a lot of people in the room too. And I do think it would work. That's my 2 cents. But, I think you've seen how we run meetings in the Bureau of Asset Management. We're trying.
Question.
Yeah.
How much is this gonna cost all 5 systems combined? And my second part of the question is what's police's,
You're jumping ahead.
allocation?
All right, so the joint management meeting will not cost you anything.
Well, we're talking lunch.
Yeah.
Lunch, not this one.
Well, it depends what time. Maybe we'll do it like 3 o'clock, just so maybe we'll do some cookies. But so just very quickly, the idea also as part of the Service Compact Agreement is at the beginning of each fiscal year, we have the calendar joint manager meetings scheduled, but also have a proposed calendar for what are the sort of strategic topics we're going to be focusing on each month throughout the year at the board meeting, so folks have some idea of what we're going to do at the regular investment. Okay.
The last point is, Allison, to emphasize, we're asking for a pilot, so we
Yes.
can prepare through August, when we typically don't have any meetings, in September, October, November, December, to see how it works and be able to change as we go to support the.
Right, this is the request for vote in the Service Compact is a 4 month pilot that we would then come back at the end of.
I mean, to be honest, I'd like to see, a portion where we have to reauthorize it.
Yeah.
Rather than just a
Well,
pilot.
so what I would say 2 things. One, the idea would be a 4-month pilot that requires reauthorization. And then 2, our thinking is that as part of the annual Service Compact, each year it would require reauthorization. Okay, so now to the corpus budget, which is where we will get to your question. Steve, are you doing?
Actually, I think you would.
Kate, do you want to do this first? Do the most in the weeds on it? Sure. Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'll come over.
No.
Yeah. Okay, appreciate it. We all work. Okay.
All right, so trustees, as Allison mentioned, the headcount adjustments come out of recommendations from STAR. Overall, the ask is that it would increase, corpus headcount to 127. This reflects a few different changes happening in the Bureau of Asset Management. The first one is that the AUM has gotten larger over time. The second one is that the new asset allocation brings more into private markets. This means that we have a more cumbersome ongoing due diligence process. And then finally.
Not to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the current head count?
The current
Getting there.
yeah, we'll get
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. Getting ahead of myself.
That's fine. But let me just answer your question, which is that the current corpus headcount is 70, the current city headcount inclusive is 133. So this is the city number, this is the corpus number here, the total number in this proposal would be 163.
So what happened is,
So it'll be 163 total?
163 total, that includes folks in BAM that are paid for by the city, so you wouldn't be contributing to your
Yeah, I got you.
portion of police, yeah.
Sorry, I thought the McKinsey report said authorized up to 139.
So that is including a few folks from our tech team upstairs, it's not. It includes basically shared controller resources in what they were reviewing.
Okay,
Some
so the
HR
McKinsey report is incorrect in that regard?
I think there's a little footnote, so basically, it's just
Okay.
including shared controller's office resources that aren't actually paid for by corporates in any way.
Okay, so that's not like 133, but the other side, okay. And so that's authorized, that's not counting vacancies, 133?
133 counts, it's head count, current bus and seats, and pipeline, so
Yeah,
authorized
gotcha.
total.
Okay,
Yeah,
authorized. And we go up to 163 corporate plus, I think.
correct.
Okay.
So the second thing that this proposal does, overall, we've talked about this, is it raises salaries based on the inputs from the Mercer study. And then the third thing is that it does reallocate some folks who are currently paid for by city, but work entirely in service of the pension fund to Corpus. And so all in all, what we're proposing is that the request would be approximately 1 basis point of your total AUM. So getting into a little bit more detail.
So where about, what do we say we are, Corpus Fund, it's 77?
70 across all the systems right now.
Do you want to just go to the,
Yes, all right.
why don't we go forward and then we
Yeah.
go backward again? Like,
Okay.
so what, this is, yeah, why don't we start at the cost?
Okay.
What we're asking police pension fund to pay, and then we'll go backwards to how we get there so that we can sort of, so keep going.
That's not,
It's not working?
yeah. On the computer.
Allison, you said you emailed this to us, or you're gonna email it to us after the?
It's in the,
It's, yeah, we emailed it, here we go.
There we go.
So this is what the cost of the police pension funds that we're requesting, is $6.1 million.
And what is it now?
and we're confident. That was like, what was it, Carson?
Yeah, so right now it's just basically it's 2.3, I think it is. If we were to allocate based on the current corpus, we've never really done it in this exact way, so it's not that you've approved that number and now we're asking it to increase, but if you were to do the same allocation, it's 2.3.
It just seems like a large amount of.
Well, now it's back
If
into
you're
it.
talking from 70 to 127,
Yeah.
is that 35% approximately?
So, yeah, it is, so like
Increase.
now let's go back, so
Okay.
we'll start here and then if you can back into it, so, yeah, if it's working. Do you want to do this by head count?
Yeah, if it continues now.
Okay, here we go. This is what we. Sure, I mean, you can, but, so basically, right now, this is by team, what we're recommending. So the total, as you see on the right side, proposed corpus at 127. Current corpus is what is currently budgeted for now. New resources is what, based on the McKinsey study, they identified that we need new resources, and we can break this down by team, you know, offline as, if folks are interested. And then shift to corpus is important, and Dorsa and Nicole handed out, this is what the new org chart would look like, so it's all here. Blue is what it would be paid for by corpus, gray is what would be paid for by city.
And what do you mean by shift corpus?
This is what I mean. So right now, there are a number of folks who are currently paid for by city taxpayer dollars
Okay.
who work for the sole benefit of the 500 funds. And then it's largely a holdover from, there's a combination of things. One, it's a holdover from pre-corpus, where everybody's paid for by city taxpayer funds, and there was a theory inside BAM, the controller's office, that, you know, David Jetter used to talk about, that we needed to keep a core number of investment and pension fund staff on city payroll in case corpus ever went away. And we now feel confident that corpus isn't going away, and so don't think we need to do that anymore. So that's what it means to really shift over to corpus. Another thing that happened, particularly on the legal side, like you'll see on the back, there are legal resources. For reasons I don't understand, there used to be 4 lawyers on the legal team, it's on the far left, that were paid for by corpus. And over time, because of accounting snafus within the controller's office, when those people left and new people were hired, they were paid for by the city. And so this is a combination of just like moving folks that never made it over and then reallocating back to where we were.
The total number of increased employees from 70 to 127, is that including the shift to corporate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's new resources 21, and then we're talking about shifting 30.
Okay, so it's not like, so that number, 35% number is a lot lower.
Yes.
And
I
again,
mean, it's the cost to purchase though, but it's not new people.
Understood.
the new resources were actually in large part recommended by McKinsey, and we've actually tamped them down a little bit, but to focus on being able to support and service and deliver on the investment objectives. So you can see the lion's share in investment teams. The bulk of those are in private assets as we increase our allocations there. EPIs, as well as we tend to be open-minded about doing different things, and expanding our capabilities there. Risk management, that was with Ed Berman Group, and risk management is expanded analytics that ties into reporting, which is below for another head count. And then lastly, DE&I, one additional resource for implementation there. But again, the bulk of it is focused on investments and transparency and reporting.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So just the compensation study recommendations, again, just to emphasize the fact that this was done with an external consultant, and it was actually done at arm's length from BAM. Although we had input into the mapping of specific individuals into categories, it was largely handled by our HR department within the controller's office. You can see that Mercer's done the study to produce really two comparatives, the 75th percentile and the 50th percentile, comparing BAM to a number of different types of entities, so government, not-for-profits, financial services such as investment managers, insurance companies, trust public pension plans of the same size and complexity that certainly we have here within New York City, and lastly, endowments and foundations. Mercer's recommendation was, for a number of reasons, that we should be targeting the 75th percentile, given that we're combined, we're the third largest public pension plan in the country. It's based on the structure of 5 unique plans. There is a level of complexity there as well. And also the fact that many of the public pension plans away from us have incentive programs, and we do not have one, and we're not advocating for one here. So that's why they said we should target the 75th percentile. In terms of our compensation principles that just came up, we're looking to obviously be able to attract and retain really good people. And I believe the better your investment team is, the better the results will be in the portfolios. We also have advocated, or are advocating a flattened distribution structure. And I'd say the biggest aspect of that is to really kind of compress the CIO compensation down a little bit, to really focus on awarding higher levels of compensation to asset class heads and senior investment officers as a starting point. But lastly, the recommendations you're about to see are really made in the context. We understand that we work for government, New York City government. We understand and respect the fact that the vast majority of our underlying pension beneficiaries and participants are ex-union or union employees, and we wanted to make sure that our compensation requests were reasonable in that context. And with that at the bottom, and we'll go into the numbers in a moment, we're actually proposing salary increases that result in an average of 3% below Mercer's 50th percentile. Again, they recommended 75th percentile. We're actually 22% below that based on our recommendations. Again, for those issues that we highlighted above. You want to go through mapping, Kate?
Yeah, sure. So when the slide pops up, okay. So what you'll see and what you may have seen already in the materials we've provided from Mercer is that there are 25 roles listed on there. You look at this org chart, there's a lot more than 25. So what we did was we basically selected 25 standard roles that we would then map everyone that you see here onto. So there were kind of two reasons for that. One was very practical around getting the procurement done, getting the compensation study done in 2 years, which is not very fast. And then the other reason was in part just to create some sort of structure and equity within our team so that there's 25 standard roles that everyone can sort of fit into. So we've done the work to map everybody into one of the 25, and that's where we come up with a total. I have on this side.
Okay, this is really small, and it is in your, with the materials we sent around, and we'll send around so that you can actually look at it in detail,
Yeah,
not just on a slide,
but these are the 25, positions that Mercer had looked at and made recommendations on. You can see the proposal that DAM is making, the request we're making is in green in the middle. And although these numbers look like they're big numbers, and candidly they are on a relative basis, you have to remember that base salaries have not been adjusted for many people in the Bureau of Asset Management in almost going on 10 years. Even just looking at inflation and the impact on purchasing power, those salaries are adjusted down about 31% from where they were in 2014. The other things on the right-hand side, those 2, 3, 4 categories, really, it looks at the compensation that we're requesting for each of these positions relative to the 50th percentile and relative to the 75th percentile that Mercer recommended. And you can see there's a lot of red on that screen. It's intentional. There's more red on the top line for the CIO position. Again, as we've really wanted to consciously compress the level of compensation to put more focus on asset class heads and senior investment officers and other chief positions within the team. So we think this is responsible, but obviously note that the numbers, even though we think they're conservative relative to the analysis and to what our peers are paid, again, we think that's fair in the context that we are government employees working in New York City.
So I just want to get clarity on this point about not getting raises for X amount of time. So the way you get raises for the most part in the city is you're in a title, the MPOs come along, you might get some discretionary raises, not a ton. I understand that there was a segment of the BAM corpus funded population that was subject to the last comp study where internally the comptroller forewent seeking cost of living raises. That was limited to which titles? Like, that wasn't this list of titles.
That was not entirely this list of titles,
Yes,
no.
okay.
Also, I would say there were 2 factors. One, the market dynamics have changed.
Yeah.
For incomparable, and there was a list of particularly senior titles, and if you will see that the Mercer study showed that it's our SIOs and above really that have the largest gap from between the 50th percentile and 75th percentile from where people are being paid now to what they say is the market, and our lower titles have a smaller gap.
Sure.
And so it's a combination of market dynamics and the prior controller not giving folks
Sure.
the managerial rate.
But, so other than those top 6 titles, right, is it 6?
I
think it's a little more.
Well, the tranche of titles that were subject to the kind of bump up that was received in 2015, 2016, all the other titles got pay raises in the same way everyone else.
With an exception, well, yes, but I would just say, the last comp study only looked at investment titles, not operational titles, right? So we have 2 issues, that there are 2 sort of inequities, for lack of a better word, to navigate, which is the operations side, of investment operations side of the house never benefit from sort of a market survey of like what they would be making at other pension funds. And then you have the investment folks who didn't see the managerial raises. So there's like 2 things with that.
You know, when we bargain, I mean, it's a reality in New York City that, you know, there's usually a pattern and follow a pattern, I think. I mean, we agreed in 2014 to raise the, you know, let's say the CIO and other salaries. And I don't know what the city manager's pay raises have been since then, but I think
Same as the pattern.
They've been largely the same as that.
What's that?
Now they've
I think
been,
they've been the same as.
Well, I think,
they've been the same as-
I would have to see what the numbers, well, the percentage numbers, and, you know, if it comes to that number, I mean, that, so be it.
If you see where it says estimated May 2024 salary on this, and again, like, we can have a much longer conversation and dig into this more before next month, but the estimated May 2024 salary is where, and we don't have the exact figures, because, you know, the HR folks, like, have to calculate by retro, right, how many years were people here, and therefore what retro qualifies for, all the things that you guys know instinctively from your bargaining. But that's why it's an estimate, but based on the May 2024 column is where people will be after, or approximately after getting the most recent round of managerial.
So managerial raises go back to May 21st, 21, 3%.
Right, I'm talking about the addition from 2014, that's.
Right, so
I-
from 2014, the top title did not get any of the managerial raises. Now, those folks who are here since 2021, Brad has reversed the decision of the prior controller and is allowing those folks to get the managerial. So they will, if they were here in 21, they'll benefit in that way, but the base salary didn't go up until then. For the higher
Correct.
levels.
So what I'm kind of saying is I don't have those numbers from 2014 on, but if you add up the managerial raises and comes out to a $200,000 raise, I would say that's fair. But if it's above what the managerial, the pay increase is a lot more percentage higher than the managerial raises, you know, I think we'll have an issue.
We can actually, I mean, we can attempt to see where the salary was in, you know, 2014 and what the compounded would have been. We can take a look at that and come back to you.
yeah, but that's only an issue for those 6 titles. All the rest of the titles, they got all the
No, I understand, right, that's the 6 titles, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, we can come back. We can take that feedback and come back.
Yes, absolutely.
Senior investment officer is one of those titles, right?
I believe so.
I believe so.
12, 15 people.
I think more.
It's more than
Yeah.
that. But we can come back and,
I mean, just.
it's a fair question.
I don't know what it is, and it could be, numbers might match.
None of this is retroactive, correct?
None of it is correct.
None of what we're proposing is
Okay.
correct. Only the.
And all these people are working here, they took the salaries or they accepted the salaries when they took the job, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have had a very difficult time hiring new people. Very difficult.
We have been-
Particularly a diverse talent.
We have been clear when we go through the process of hiring people that we are undertaking this review. This started again, like my second week here. It's taken a while, but, you know, the people have been join BAM and continue to work within BAM with the expectation that at least the analysis and a proposal would be made.
I mean, BAM, they get all the city benefits, pension wise.
Yeah, so the pension after 250, there's no pension.
Unless you're tier 4.
Yeah, so the majority of our staff now, I believe, are tier 6, not
Oh, correct.
tier 4, but yes, they would,
No,
they're
but-
entitled to a public
Yeah,
pension.
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
historically, we've always taken lower salaries than the private sector because we have those additional benefits.
Yeah, I just want
And
to
I-
be clear, we are recommending much lower salaries than the private sector and other peer pension funds, with the exception of, I think, what we're recommending, the BAT equivalent with New York State Common, which currently may be slightly higher, I'm not sure, I have to look, but the other public pension systems in this, they're the ones that are, you know, paying a lot more.
And when does the proposal, like what, so there's a current salary and the estimated salary of May of 2024, and then the proposal, when is the proposal,
When you all vote,
when it would be?
and when the 5 systems vote and approve it, and then ever long after that it would take to execute.
And would it go up again in May 2025 with the 3.25?
They would get the managerial.
That will come out of the city's funds though, correct?
No.
They
No,
would get the managerial.
Oh, so this isn't including the next.
Well, this is not including future managerial, no.
Have that discussion comes, I mean.
Right, we could have that discussion on the time. I mean, just as a reminder, that is what as part of the annual service compact agreement, we would be, you know, the board would be transparently voting on all BAM resources and budgets.
So, I'm sorry, I just want to be clear. So if we were to vote on this, let's say next month, which is a lot of information here, just, so in May of 2025, they're getting another raise.
They would get the managerial, if they're still here, they would get the managerial that everybody
Now,
else, the past.
is it split between Corpus and city, or?
No,
Or is it all-
it would be, I mean, corporate funded folks, the managerial would be paid for out of corporate like it is now. What? City pays benefits.
Right, the city's paying their benefits, I realize that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Now, the city's gonna dictate what the managerial raise is.
Yes. It's the mayor's executive order.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not part of the OLR team, but it's the pattern that dictates what the managerial rate is.
I'm just gonna go on record right now and say, there is no such thing as a pattern in the PBA zone.
Oh, sure.
I wanted to put that on the record.
Put that on the record right now.
I love Chris, I have to strongly disagree with him, we have.
I wanna go on the record right now and say, I do not agree with pattern bar.
Yaka can't get it, one at a time.
So,
I think I didn't say that everyone agreed, like,
no, we love you, Chris. We hit the PBA,
Yes, I'm glad you put that on record.
all right, I'm sorry, but
No, it's fine, it's all right.
we do not agree in pattern bargaining whatsoever. Okay? Never an argument that's made, it doesn't comply with the tail law, all right? And that's that. So, as far as the managerial raise, it would just come as mayor's executive order, and that would be it.
Yes.
So the mayor in this instance will be dictating what the raise would be for all city managers.
Right.
All I was trying to say is that process, which is, I'm not trying to make a comment about PBA.
Of course.
That process isn't something that's gonna take cognizance of these like 50 people. That process is pretty much always the same. You might not wanna call it a pattern, that's fine, but it's pretty much always the same as whatever the DC 37
With the
arrangement.
civilians.
Yeah. So that's just the way
I
that
understand,
works.
but
and
again,
that's not gonna change from
in the whole
CEO
scope of
perspective.
the city of New York, I know there's a lot of unions. DC 37 does not bargain for people.
I completely understand, I'm just explaining
Okay.
the way the managerial process is working for everyone. Completely get it.
I'm gonna make one last comment about STAR. I know there's a lot of things that we reflected in that we're working on currently that we perhaps need more resources for, but there's a number of other things that are getting done right now that we've been working on for the better part of 23 months in terms of increasing transparency, improving, investment performance. We're working on getting the fees down to be able to put fee reporting in front of the trustees more consistently. We're also working on some analytics around, value for fees or alpha generated per fee to get a sense for when we say we think that you get good value for the fees you're paying in private equity, we can actually prove that. That's hard to do, but that's something that Ed Berman and his team are working on. So we're trying to work on a number of things. I wanted the trustees to know that we're not sitting on our hands waiting for the okay to move forward and try to improve everything we're doing. But we want to be very transparent in terms of where we're trying to go. And we think we need additional resources. As I said earlier, I think from a compensation standpoint, I think people matter. I think good people will make a difference in terms of outcomes. We want to be in a position where we can be competitive to attract and retain good people.
So just to,
No, just to cut, not to cut you off, Allison, but what was the example that was used on the Zoom? It was about the Texas Pension Fund and their relation to their compensation to,
yeah, so the proposal is that we are making is that, across the 5 systems, about 1 basis point, which is 0.001% of the overall AUM goes to BAM for personnel costs. And I think Texas teachers is about 2 or 3 basis points. And so that would be.
How much does Texas teachers manage in-house?
That's a good question.
I
I don't know. But there is that difference, Brian. And I think that's reflected in our request as well, that, we don't manage as much in-house as some others do. We manage cash, which is a small component. We have ETI, obviously, which we're trying to expand. We also do all of our own underwriting on, co-investment for infrastructure. We think there's other things we can do, but, that's a valid point.
So just to confirm, just next steps, because I feel like we threw a lot of information. We uploaded all the draft service compact into Convene, but we will email it, we will circulate it to folks, following this meeting. And then we will figure out offline what meetings, et cetera, need to happen between now and next month, and we'll see where we can go. And we are, just to say, as you know, we're presenting this, to all 5 systems. This is the first presentation, this is the 2nd of May. The contours of the Service Compact Act, and obviously the comp will be the same across, the contours of the Service Compact are the same, but the details are obviously different because it's customized by.
And needless to say, as we say every month, if you have questions, Allison and I are always available, Steve's always available. Happy to address these collectively, individually. Just let us know if there are questions. Happy to answer whatever we can. Whether it's about the comp piece or it's about the proposal, including the joint manager meeting, any of those questions, we're happy to.
And just giving them time to get an investment too, from down to 7 to 12 months is good.
Yeah, there's an opportunity.
Yeah,
for
that's
us. I mean, there's certainly an opportunity for us.
But what's the time frame now?
Right now, to do a public market investment, it takes anywhere from 12 to 24 months, sometimes even up to 36 months. Our public procurement, it's terribly long. And so being able to cut that down by a half, even a third, even 2/3 will be huge. And that's true not just for public market investments, but also for like consultant RFPs. I mean, you know, how big we probably are on renewing Wilshire, whatever it is. Mercer. Yeah.
We should also mention the fact that we've got a huge backlog in contracts because it's taken so long, so we're trying to be more efficient. We're trying to we've got 117 contracts in the works.
That are backlogged.
There's a lot of work that has to get done quickly.
Thank you.
Time we want to vote? Okay. All right, so, all right, we'll table the matter, I guess. All right. So, with that, there's no further business in, public session. I'll make a motion to exit public and enter into executive.
Second motion.
Oh, thank you, the LBA is awake. All right. Okay, so, if Bam could, shut the camera, and I would ask any members of the public. Okay, hold on, the recording is on, so Kevin?
Okay, during the executive session, the trustees heard from their consultants, BAM, and several managers regarding private equity and real estate. In addition, the trustees voted on a matter discussed during an attorney-client session. Decisions were made, those decisions will be made public at the appropriate time.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
CA makes that motion.
All right, I'll second that. We all in favor, aye. Chorus of ayes, we stand adjourned. Thank you all for, zooming in today, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wait, Jack.